believe about life. And most people are unaware because it all ties together with language. Every belief we have is simply a story that we've been told repeatedly, whether we told it to ourselves or accepted it from somebody else. And so, again, it goes back to that language.
Welcome to Shaping Freedom with Lisan Basquiat, the podcast where we help you unlock your potential and redefine what it means to be free. I'm your host, Lisan Basquiat. I'm a former corporate executive, a life strategist, and the founder of Shaping Freedom. With a background spanning corporate, artistic, and personal development, I bring a unique perspective to empowering others. Listen in to discover inspiring stories and practical insights that will help you reclaim your life and rewrite your narrative. My intention is for you to gain the tools and motivation to be free in your relationships, your communities, and within yourself. This, my friends, is Shaping Freedom. On today's episode of the Shaping Freedom podcast, I have the honor of welcoming an incredible athlete, NLP practitioner, and fellow lunatic, Chukky Okobi. Chukky brings a profound and unique perspective to his work as a mental and spiritual guide. He started his career as an NFL player for the Pittsburgh Steelers, but eventually found that his personal life was lacking a sense of direction and clarity. Then he discovered the power of neuro-linguistic programming, which is where we met. It's a modality that helps us to restructure and reprogram the ways that we use language to achieve the lives that we want to live. In this episode, I sit down with Chukky to explore the life after the NFL, what he discovered about his own spirituality, and how we can rethink and recreate our lives after our careers change. This is my conversation with Chukky Okobi. Yeah, I'm super excited also. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a couple of months. We talked about this last September in Hawaii, and I had been thinking about inviting you on for quite some time, even before that. So the fact that we're here and we're in a new year, and it is February of 2024, and we're having the chance to have this conversation it feels really, really good. I'm very excited. So the reasons why I wanted to talk, there are a couple of reasons, quite a few, actually. One is because I think it's really important that people have an understanding of the how in their lives. There's a lot of talk about what is going on, and having the opportunity to talk about how to get through and to the other side of some of these things that we encounter in the world, I think is very important. And I think you're a person who can absolutely share some of that. And I think that you also personally have this incredible story of having started off as an athlete and having gotten to the point where you are today, helping to change people's lives in the way that you do is quite profound. And so I want to talk about some of that as well. So what I'd love to start with is, why don't we start with how we know each other? Let's talk about that. Let's start there, and then we'll kind of see where we wind up.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, you and I have been connected for some time through a good friend of ours and mentor, Dr. Matt James, and the good folks at the Empowerment Partnership, learning about NLP, neuro-linguistics, as well as, some higher consciousness learnings from, ancient Hawaiian lineage, and really learning that ancient wisdom and helping people to apply that ancient wisdom in these modern times when, just looking around, we need that wisdom more than ever. And so, that's where you and I, connected. And, there's all of that, Dr. Matt James, the James family, and NLP, Hawaiian shamanism and whatnot, all of those things are going to come into play in our discussion today, because they are, all connected to what I do now, and also, my resume as an athlete. All of these things connect. It's all connected. So,
So I'd love to share more about you. Let's start with kind of, I don't know where the beginning would be for you, like where the beginning of your story would be. So I don't want to speak for where I think that may be. Maybe if you can share how you got to a place of where you wanted to embark on the path of personal growth and on the path of, some things outside of what was happening in your day-to-day life. Like, tell us a bit about who you are, Chukky.
It's funny because, if people look up Chukky Okobi on Google, obviously they're going to see a lot of things about, my time in the NFL, playing college football at Purdue University, and also playing for my hometown Pittsburgh Steelers. And so it can be a little, it can spark curiosity. People wonder how you go from, playing football to personal development, higher consciousness and whatnot. One of the things one question I get a lot since I stopped playing football, people say, you ever think about coaching, coaching kids on what you were passionate about, what you were good at as a kid? And, with what I do now, using NLP and some higher level consciousness learnings, believe it or not, I am teaching the same thing that I did as an athlete. How any of us stumble upon these types of learnings in this path of personal development. In short, I know a lot of people can relate to finding these learnings when they're at a low point, when things are difficult, and you feel like, yeah, I'm running out of options here. And my story is really not any different. It all started back when I was in college, and coming out of high school, I was not a very highly recruited athlete. In the end, yeah, I played in the NFL and whatnot, but being a superstar wasn't always the story. I only had one scholarship offer coming out of high school, and that was to Purdue University, which I felt really grateful for, because my mentality at that time was, well, I could only play for one team anyway. So I didn't need everybody to want me, just needed this one opportunity. And so after my first year on the football team playing at Purdue University, the only coach in America that thought I was any good, at least that was my story, he resigned, and I freaked out. I mean, it was literally like the same feeling as like when my dad left when I was about 7 years old. And I was really going through a difficult time emotionally. I was only 18. I was just finished my first semester in college. And after about a week of feeling sorry for myself and crying in a bathroom stall in my dorm, I remember thinking to myself, listen, I'm here. I'm on this team. I still have all the opportunities to have everything I want in my career going forward. And even though I'm here doing all the things to prepare to play physically, so is everybody else. So I need something more. I need an advantage. I need something different, a piece of information that maybe none of my teammates or none of my competition knew anything about. So my thinking at that time was, I'm going to go to this used bookstore, because I figured this is a bunch of information that people threw away. And so nobody I know is going to know anything about it. And as soon as I walked into that store, it was almost like the book jumped off the shelf for me. You're going to think I'm making this up. The title of the book is The Secret of Creating Your Future by Dr. Tad James. And I was like, I was like, whoa, the secret to creating my future. This is exactly what I need. So I grabbed the book and sat down on the hardwood floor and just started going deeper into it. And so after a couple of minutes of reading, I remember putting the book down and saying, oh, I have no idea what this guy's talking about. He was talking about mindset and emotion and energy and all these things. And I'm like, maybe this isn't what I need. So I started to get up to go find something else. And all of a sudden I was just stuck. I mean, it was like I couldn't move. And the title of the book was like glowing at me, The Secret of Creating Your Future. I just was like, I got to know the secret. So I grabbed the book and just sat back down and went deeper and deeper into it until it all made sense. And then all of a sudden, it clicked. I said, I think I get it. What he's saying is the world you think is out there is actually all inside. It's in your mind. And by learning this secret that he was talking about, one can learn to control what's in their mind. And so my logic at 18 years old was, well, then if I learn this secret, I can control my world. And I bought the book. And so that was my secret.
The reason I'm pressing you on this is because, or not pressing you, but I want to know more about this because a lot of people talk about what's happening for them in their own world or in the greater world. And one of the things that I think is missing in the conversation is the how, right? So you take the book, you read the book, you feel completely, pulled by that book and by those concepts. And then how do you take those concepts and translate them into or use them for the benefit, what it was that you were looking to achieve?
My practice, my coaching and speaking practice today is called Basic Instructions, Mind Mastery. And the entire thought process behind the idea of basic instructions is taking a lot of these esoteric learnings and putting into what I call NFL, or normal functioning language. Because, when we start talking about frequency, vibration, manifestation, people's eyes gloss over and you lose them quick. So I always do my best to put it into language that you cannot possibly misunderstand. Because when I was 18 years old, this is what I had to do to make sense of it. He was speaking language I didn't really understand. So when you think about some of the concepts that I got from, Tad James, which, later on I learned came from the ancient Hawaiians. The biggest concept when you're talking about the how is understanding a concept that, if you're anyone who's familiar with neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, or, anyone who's been exposed to Hawaiian, huna is the term we use nowadays. It was a concept back then that we know as perception is interpretation. And that was, when I remember reading that in the book and was like, I don't know what this guy's talking about. The funny thing is, the deeper I went into it, the simpler it got. And so a lot of times when we think about the term perception is interpretation, the easiest way to make sense of it is just look up the dictionary definition of those two words, perception and interpretation. Perception is the state of being or process of becoming aware of something through the five senses. I smelled something. I heard something. I saw, felt, or tasted something. That's all the word perception means. And most people are not aware that the only way for us human beings to make sense of the world outside of our physical bodies or outside of our minds is through those five senses. That's how we connect with our world. So to put this into basic instructions lingo, or normal functioning language, NFL, perception is interpretation means my life is whatever story I'm telling.
That's right.
And so when you talk about how do we integrate these things, it starts with understanding that by recognizing that life is simply a matter of what is the narrative in my mind. The first thing you got to do is take control of that narrative. That's the first thing. And so I always look at it like, all these stories about things we've been through, just like I was feeling back then in college. You think about when we were kids, little kids, right? Always playing make-believe. And when we played make-believe, we would make up stories about ourselves. And those stories were always empowering. Always. I'm a princess.
That's right.
I'm a Michael Jordan. I'm the president. Could you imagine your kids when they were real little playing make-believe and saying, oh my God, I love this game. I get to be anyone I want. I could do anything. Who am I going to be? I got it. I'm going to be the victim. Kids wouldn't do that.
Doesn't happen. Didn't happen. Yeah.
So, but we were all that kid. So where did that start? Because a lot of times that story, that narrative that's going on in your mind, it's what I like to call limiting beliefs, greatest hits, because everybody knows the words. And so when you get that limiting beliefs, greatest hits spin around in your mind like a vinyl record, it sounds, if you know the words, sing along, because everybody knows the words. It sounds something like, I can't, I'm not.
They did me wrong.
Yeah. It's all, any story. You think about that little kid playing make-believe. They would not consciously choose to be done wrong. They would not consciously choose to be a victim. And since we were all those kids, you recognize that you would not consciously choose that. Therefore, it cannot be true because you wouldn't choose that story. And once, learning from Tad James and learning his stuff from the ancient Hawaiians is really what set me on course to really take control of my life, my career, as a young athlete, and helped me to achieve everything I did, and even after sports was over and I went through a pretty difficult time, it was turning back to these concepts that helped me get out of that dark place and really recognizing that each and every one of us there's nobody else in here in my mind telling the story. There's nobody else in my heart feeling these emotions. So whatever story, however I interpret the emotions that I'm feeling, feelings, five senses, however, whatever story I tell about those emotions becomes my life. And so I just recognize that, whatever I'm feeling, it can't mean that I'm a victim because I would never choose that.
Two quick questions what I really enjoy and appreciate about you, Chukky, is that you have this way, exactly what you're just doing, like taking these concepts that seem to be very esoteric and very kind of complicated and really bringing them down into language that anyone can understand and apply to their own lives. Like, how do I navigate this life in a way that brings me joy, in a way that feels good, and in a way that helps me to eliminate the things that are not in my best interest and bring in more of the things that are? I would love, what is NLP? What is neuro-linguistic programming?
Well, neuro-linguistic programming, just to give people a point of reference, anybody that's heard of Tony Robbins, if you have read Tony Robbins or been to a Tony Robbins event, you have experience with it. What NLP or neuro-linguistics programming is, again, breaking down the language. Neuro, refers to your neurology, your mind or your brain. Linguistics refers to language or communication. And programming refers to how that language functions. So neuro-linguistic programming is the study of how language affects your neurology, which that neurology, those nerves that run from your brain all the way through every aspect of your body, you realize that the words in your mind actually run your body and run your entire life. And so when you understand the nature of the language that you're using, the stories that you're telling yourself are really what's running your life. And so, NLP, again, it sounds scientific. It's so much simpler than most people understand. It's literally the study of the stories we tell ourselves and the study of how the stories we tell other people, how to communicate effectively.
So I think that's one of the things that draws people to NLP. Those of us who are interested in it, because we start to recognize the power that there is when you take responsibility and accountability for your life and for the way that you're experiencing the things that are happening in your life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It goes back to that old saying, what doesn't kill me makes me stronger. Well, are we telling the story about what didn't kill me? Are we telling the story about how it made me stronger, or are we talking about all the negative emotions we felt in that experience? Because whichever story you tell becomes your reality. So if you say, you say words, if you're continually communicating with yourself and with other people using language like I can't and I'm not, then that becomes your reality. And that the language that centers around lack, you're actually calling the energy of lack, and you're going to end up experiencing that in what you see, what you hear, what you feel, and start to believe that whatever that limiting story that you've been telling yourself or that you've been accepting from the outside world, you start to believe that's true. And that actually, leads to the idea of beliefs. And most people never actually sit there and, examine their beliefs, and when we're talking about belief, this is beyond religion. Religion is a construct. It's just like, what do you believe about yourself? What do you believe about life? And most people are unaware because it all ties together with language. Every belief we have is simply a story that we've been told repeatedly, whether we've told it to ourselves or accepted it from somebody else. And so, again, it goes back to that language. Like, what story have I been telling, whether I created it myself or whether I accepted it from somebody else, whether a parent or an ex of some sort, if you take it from the news. If you continue to accept these stories of limitation, then that's going to trigger the emotions that go with it. And those emotions become the vibration of you and the vibration of your life and everything that you encounter.
What did you believe about yourself earlier that you were later able to change into something that was a little more positive for you?
Growing up, I was first generation American. My parents are from Nigeria.
Where did you grow up, Chukky?
I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, is where I was born.
Okay.
And so lived most of my life in Pittsburgh. However, when my parents split, we moved around a lot as a kid. And so I was a new kid in school all the time. I went to 6 schools before high school. So I got used to always being the new kid. And I developed a belief that I didn't fit in anywhere because of these continued experiences of being new and having to assimilate to a new way of thinking, a new way of being. I went to school, it was originally, I'm from Squirrel Hill, which is the second largest Jewish community in America, but behind Manhattan. And so grew up around a lot of, white people, Jewish people, which is not a problem. To me as a kid, I didn't know any different. So when my parents split and end up going to public school with inner city Black kids, I still didn't quite fit in because, I'm from, my family's African. They speak different. We eat different food. We have different ways of engaging life. So when I was with all white people, I felt like I didn't fit in. When I was with all Black people, I still didn't fit in. And so then you can see how that becomes a belief that I don't belong anywhere. The only time I felt like I belonged was when I was playing sports. And because not only, all of a sudden I went from, not really mattering in the chaos of what's going on with the adults at home to being seen as a leader. And, just within the context of a team, now I have this happy family that I was lacking at home. So all of a sudden I found a place where I fit in. It took me all the way to the NFL, to the Super Bowl and all those good things. And what I found out over time was, instead of looking at it as, oh, you didn't fit in with the white or the Black people, it's like, no, I learned what we call an NLP, requisite variety, and where I was able to build rapport with anybody. And so what I found later in life was that those experiences enable me to fit in no matter where I go, that I could relate to people on all different levels. Like even as a speaker, I'll speak to, elementary, middle school, high school kids and be able to use basic instructions, normal functioning language to get these higher level concepts, make it so that they can digest that. I can go into a boardroom of, venture capitalists in lower Manhattan and give the exact same speech and it'll land exactly the same. And if it weren't for my experiences as a kid, having to adjust myself, reassimilate myself, fit into different places, I wouldn't have that ability now as an adult. And so to me, again, I don't tell the story is not that, oh, I was a new kid all the time, I didn't fit in anywhere. That's how I felt. However, maybe I was misinterpreting, what I was perceiving in those emotions. And, now that I have realized that I get to control the narrative, I get to control the story, I've been able to use those experiences to my advantage in the present.
Do you know that we have a line of Shaping Freedom wellness products? Each are beautifully crafted and designed to support you in cherishing your mind, body, emotions, and soul. Carve out a sanctuary in your life with our Luxe sustainable yoga and meditation mats, essential oil candles, and more. Embrace self-care and reflection with every item, lovingly created to enhance your daily practice of spending time on you. Elevate your wellness journey with Shaping Sanctuary Collection because you deserve to feel balanced, nurtured, and inspired. Visit shapingsanctuary.com for more information. Yeah, I'm first generation also. My father was Haitian and my mother was Puerto Rican. And the first generation experience is a very different one because I think, and it's interesting, we've never had this conversation, but I share the same thought and belief actually that, this experience of being different actually helped me because it helped me to see the world in a broader way where I'm able to look at people at who the people are first. And I'm also able to see and feel the energy of different places because I was put into so many situations that felt so unfamiliar and where I've had some sense of uncertainty. So I think sometimes we look for, the most comfortable of situations when in fact there is so much to learn when we're put into spaces that maybe aren't exactly the way we would imagine them to be.
Exactly. And having been forced as when we were younger into these uncomfortable situations.
Exactly.
Now, when you find as an adult that you're feeling stuck, we have this awareness that that discomfort is a precursor to evolution and growth. Because I've been here before when I was in second grade or when I was in sixth grade or when I was in ninth grade.
Right.
I'm able to really mitigate that fear, if you will, of doing something new, opening myself up to learning something new, because by opening myself up to learn a new way of thinking, a new way of behaving, a new way of communicating, a new way of interpreting my emotions, that new piece of information, that wisdom is what's going to help me to get from where I am to where it is that I want to be.
Absolutely. So so at 18, which is a beautiful age to start embarking down this path, how do you set the stage or kind of set the roadmap for what you're doing next in your life? Like, how have you been able to take that learning? Obviously, you applied it to an incredible career in football. And then you mentioned briefly having experienced kind of a darker time and then, move from there. How do you get from one marker to the next?
It's funny because a lot of the credit goes back to Dr. Matt James and what I've learned through him. Because when I first, encountered, NLP, well, the NLP.com in that school, I didn't know that Dr. Matt was Tad James' son. I had no idea. I didn't know there was anything.
Oh, really?
I had no idea.
Oh, wow.
And so it's an interesting story about the first time I met Dr. Matt and connected those dots. But, it was at a time, when, I had pretty much, in my opinion, hit rock bottom. I just lost some people close to me. And after I've been struggling with my identity, after having identified as an athlete for so long and then no longer having that, and so it was funny. It wasn't until after, going through therapy and medication. And, in 2016, I was hospitalized for, off and on for about 9 months, with a lot of different, interesting symptoms, which, they attributed to TBI, traumatic brain injuries from playing football. The real frustration from that experience was that every test that they ran, every medical test they ran, came back looking normal, yet I was suffering. And so I couldn't connect the dots. So after being in the hospital, I remember just thanking the doctors, for all of their efforts to help me. But I was at a point where I realized that this maybe isn't the help that I need. So can I just go home? And so, yeah, they're not going to hold me hostage. So I went home, and I remember I was living in this mansion I bought in Pittsburgh. But at that point, I was in such a dark place. I was living in the basement, and I was laying in the bed, just staring at the ceiling. And I remember thinking, just praying to myself, like, God, if this is it, if this is it for me, if I'm dying, then okay. Like I was just kind of like whatever. And then that thought, I said, wait a second, that doesn't sound like me. I've never been okay with just giving up. And so started kind of going back and forth in my mind. And then that book popped back to mind. And I remembered what I got from Tad J. I said, wait a second, if I can create a reality that, enable me to get drafted by my hometown team and win a Super Bowl and do all these things that, my entire life people told me were impossible. It's like I can get over whatever's going on right now in my life. I can fix this. And so that's how I ended up going down the rabbit hole and ended up on NLP.com and going to practitioner training, was that almost 8 years ago now. So it's funny because it's coaching after all of the medicine and therapy and none of that work. It was coaching, because my coach, he's from Hawaii. I love this guy. Now my coach, he's always talking about his mentor or his uncle and what he used to say in the native Hawaiian language. Aohe pauko ike ko halau, which translates to realize not all learning comes from your school.
Comes from your school.
There's learnings all around us if you quiet down and open up your mind, because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at start to change. So, when I met Dr. Matt and just finally after being in the trainings for a little while and sharing how I ended up in this training, he said, how many years did you play in the NFL? I said 8. He said 8? I said 8. He said, I see. You realize playing in the NFL is a very unique experience. It's a human experience, but a very unique experience with a lot of unique learnings and wisdom. And whether you realize it or not, everything you need to overcome whatever challenges you're dealing with in life right now, you actually learn playing football, which just blew my mind. I'm sitting here like, what are you talking about? He's like, listen, everything you learn in playing football, because the way the ancient Hawaiians thought, everything's a metaphor. And football is just a metaphor. So when you're down there on the field playing, it's chaotic. There's people all over the place. And you can really only see what's going on in front of you. There's only one place in the whole stadium you can see the bigger picture of what's actually going on, and that's in the press box. That's why there's a coach up there. So if you ever watch football, you see somebody on the telephone on the sideline, they're calling up to get perspective as to what's actually going on. So what most people don't realize is we're all down on the field of our life. And there's a lot of things happening around you that you're not aware of that are playing directly into your success or lack thereof. And so, when you get somebody in the press box of your life or your career or your relationships or your physical health or your spirituality, it's like we could all use somebody in the press box to give us a broader perspective. The more perspective you have, the more choices of action you have. The more I know about what's actually happening, more so than just what I believe is happening, but what is actually happening. Now that's going to open me up to options of thinking, of behavior, which then lead to different emotions. And, it was connecting those dots from all of the learnings I got along the way as an athlete that helped me to reverse everything I was going through. I mean, I was in a hospital for off and on for 9 months since, learning, the ancient Hawaiian wisdom, through Huna and, NLP. Since 2019, I haven't had a symptom. Like everything's gone. The medical doctors couldn't do anything. And it was really learning what I didn't know that I didn't know that set me free. And so that's a big part of what I do now, is to help people to connect the dots on their life. They're on the line of scrimmage or down on the field of their life. As a coach, I'm providing a press box view. Let me give you a perspective of what's actually happening so that they can make better choices, make adjustments, and go back out there into their life and get different results.
You talked about how you heard something, your own thought, but it didn't sound like you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that happens a lot in life to people,
mm-hmm.
Or with people where, you're saying something, even you're thinking something, and I commend you for having had the discernment to know the difference between your voice and some other voice. Doesn't matter whose, right? Or where it came from, but this voice that actually is not you, the you that is not you. So I want to make sure that we say something about that, because there are so many people who are experiencing just that.
Absolutely. It all goes back to all of the stories that we've collected throughout life. And so at that point, you know, I just lost two siblings. A mentor of mine had passed away in a very short period of time. You know, they say these things come in threes. So I had just experienced number three. And so the thing is, any story that's not empowering, like I explained before, it cannot be me. Because the me that came into this world, you know, my mother's son, as I like to put it, my mother's son wouldn't think that way. And so anytime I hear these stories, it lets me believe now, you know, at that time, I didn't really make sense of it this way, but you can always make sense of things in reflection. It's what I was experiencing in that moment is what I call an emotional filter. It's an emotional filter through which I'm engaging my world. And so looking outside of myself through an emotional filter, you know, all of the communication that's going out and the communication that's going in is going through this filter. And looking outside of myself through the filter is like looking out the window at the tree I see out there. I can see the blue sky, the white clouds, the green grass, the trunk. I can see it all clearly, or so I believe. But there's something in my view right now that is 100% there. We can all agree it's there, but I can't consciously see it. And that is the glass. So think about it like this. I think I'm seeing what's going on in my life clearly, but could it be through the unconscious filter of the glass? I mean, my emotion. I mean, the glass. And so the thing is, a lot of times when you deal with clients that come in and they're telling the story and I explain these things and they'll say things like, what do you mean it's a filter? My story's true. You weren't there. How can you tell me it's a filter? I said, there's actually a smoking gun piece of evidence. Again, go back to when you were that little kid playing make-believe. You would never choose to be a victim. So if you hear a story like that, there's got to be a filter that's making it sound that way, because you wouldn't consciously make that story up. And that's really, that's basic instructions. It's like, wait a second. You would never choose to be the victim. You would never choose to be incapable. You would never choose to lack. So any story about that means there has to be a filter that's making it sound that way, which means there's some emotion that I've been holding on to, something that I need to let go of, something I got to get rid of, clean this whiteboard off so we can paint a new picture. And that's what really, you know, recognizing that voice, once you hear that negative story from you, about you, means filter. And that means it's time to do some release work and get rid of whatever's bothered you inside.
Do you know that we have a line of Shaping Freedom wellness products? Each are beautifully crafted and designed to support you in cherishing your mind, body, emotions, and soul. Carve out a sanctuary in your life with our Luxe sustainable yoga and meditation mats, essential oil candles, and more. Embrace self-care and reflection with every item, lovingly created to enhance your daily practice of spending time on you. Elevate your wellness journey with Shaping Sanctuary Collection, because you deserve to feel balanced, nurtured, and inspired. Visit shapingsanctuary.com for more information. Wow. So you're an incredible coach. We know that. And if a person has the ability to, they should reach out to you and learn more about how you can help them. And for those folks who perhaps are not in a position, they're not ready or whatever, is that how a person would know that there's something going on when you start to hear yourself thinking or saying, or allowing into your presence a negative story about yourself? Is that how you know that there's something going on?
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's the biggest
It's just
thing.
that simple.
Because it's like when you listen to the story in your mind, don't fight it. Just pay attention to it. And then ask yourself, do I like this story?
Mm.
And if the answer is no, well, then it's a filter.
Let's do something about it.
Yeah,
okay.
You gotta
I love that.
Do some release, and that's it.
I love that. Okay. You know? Let's talk about identity for a second, because you mentioned that there came a point in time where you were struggling yourself with identity. I don't know if struggling may be the word I'm using. I don't know. You can use whichever feels good for you. But you talked about identity and how that had come up in your life. And I think there are those of us who are in this place of being identified in a certain way. And it can be as an NFL player. It can be as the sister of one of the greatest painters in the world, ever. It could be as a mother or, a dad, a husband, whatever, a lot of different ways. Let's talk a little bit about identity and how you can leverage identity to either move forward, or what are some of the things that keep a person tied and kind of, imprisoned by identity?
I love this conversation because it all connects, and it goes back to the stories that we either accept or create ourselves, and those stories about who we believe we are. Because remember, beliefs are just the story we've told repeatedly. So it's easy to attach yourself to a certain narrative around yourself. So, professional athletes, which is a big focus of mine, with a lot of the clients I work with, it's recognizing that a lot of people start playing sports just like people start playing instruments when they're very young. When you're talking about sports, maybe 5, 6 years old, a lot of musicians start playing, instruments around that same time. And so realize that human being, by the time they're 25, so let's say they started at 5 and now they're 25, they have no conscious memory of not having a jersey number, of not playing some sort of position or not playing that and not being a musician. They have no memory of their paradigm. Within their paradigm of their life, they've always been an athlete. And we especially men and adults in general, we tend to define ourselves by what we do professionally. So if I fight fires, then I declare I am a firefighter. If I teach people, then I say I am a teacher. Now, playing sports is professional sports is a very unique experience, but that dynamic is the same. So I believed I was a football player. So just imagine if you're an engineer or an accountant and you're 30, 31 years old, and you get a call from your employer and it goes something like this. Hey, how you doing? Now, I know you didn't do anything wrong, but you're fired. By the way, you'll never work in this job again. I guess you're not who you thought you were, huh? Good luck with life. Click. What most people don't realize, because playing pro sports is such a unique opportunity, that's how 99% of pro sports careers end. 99%. There's only so many Kobe Bryants and Drew Breeses and Ray Lewises out there. 99% of athletes have to walk away not knowing who, at the end, their paradigm is shattered. And they say, I don't even know how to relate to the world anymore. And all of a sudden, you can imagine the emotions that come up, the filters that I was dealing with, to the point where all of a sudden I had beef with the entire world. It's like every relationship, business wise, family relationships, romantic, everything started to fall apart. The thing is, there's only one common denominator, and that was me. And so what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with me. What's wrong is the story I was telling through that filter. And then all of a sudden that controlled my emotions and my behaviors, in my communication, which led to relationships breaking down, led to irrational thoughts, irrational decisions, which then affect you financially. And, one big thing in society, we talk about identity, especially when it comes to former professional athletes, is we hear stories about their issues with substance abuse or
after they leave. Absolutely.
After they leave. What we're talking about is the effect. Nobody's dealing with the cause. And that's why I've taken up that as my kuleana, my responsibility is to help people understand these dynamics so that they can regain control of their mind, their emotions, and effectively their life.
Right. Because whether you're a former professional athlete or whether you're a former male person or corporate person, at the end of the day, if you have connected your identity and who you are to this thing that you do every day, it creates confusion. It creates issues for you in the world. And I think what I love about what you do, the work that you do in the area of focus that you have, is that so often in this world, people focus on what you see. You focus on the behavior. You focus on the anger that a person is showing, or the focus is on, what they're doing for a living. And what I love is that you go behind that, you get to the root cause of things, because that's really where the healing and the change and shift happens. Those external kind of things are only a reflection of what's happening on the inside. So if you can go there, then that other stuff kind of goes away.
Right. Yeah. It's over time we collect stories about ourselves. And so like this dynamic that I talk about with athletes, I've helped people with dealing with that same dynamic in a lot of different backgrounds. Staying at home mom that's dealing with empty nest.
The same thing. It's applicable everywhere. Yeah, it really is.
And so these different, once you're transitioning, I've worked with first responders, law enforcement, military who are going through transition.
Same thing.
Same thing. I've worked with cancer patients who were questioning a lot of different things. There's a lot of similar dynamics there. And at the end of the day, just recognize that each chapter of your life is going to require a different version of you. And so, this belief that I'm a football player, it's not really useful anymore when I'm not. So that's where a lot of it's what I call Christmas lights. It's like tangled up Christmas lights, and that's how life feels. Like, God, what am I going to do about this? And I love the metaphor of Christmas lights because it presupposes that these lights didn't come like this. It also presupposes that there is a solution. And so at the end of the day, no matter how difficult it might look, just like pulling out those Christmas lights, even though your life may feel that way, just know that you didn't come into this world that way. That we all came into this world rich, not with wisdom or money, but rich with innocence, without a scratch of experience. And so it's about getting back to that place. Because if you were there, if you came into the world that way, that means you have the ability to do and have that level of clarity, that level of innocence, that level of wonder and curiosity about the future that we had when we were that kid playing make-believe. And we got to get back to that, really, and harness that power that allowed us to be Superman or be Kobe Bryant or be a princess or be whatever we believe we could be back then. We still have the ability to do that. We just got to let go of that. We got to get all of those limiting beliefs, greatest hits, get those records out of your collection. No more I can't, no more I'm not, because you when you came into this world, when you were your mother's son or daughter, you didn't talk like that.
That's right. I thought I was going to marry Michael Jackson or Lawrence Hilton Jacobs, and neither of those things happened.
Right.
But I don't think they were right for me anyway. It's okay.
Yeah, but we romanticized those characters throughout life.
I sure did. I was like, Michael Jackson. You talked about getting someone in the press box of your life. And I know, again, that as a brilliant coach, that is part of the role that you play and support your clients with, and the people that are in the audiences where you speak. Can you, for a couple of minutes, can you riff a little bit on this press box? What is it? A press box? Yeah, press box. Can you riff on that a little bit? Because I think that when you have an incredible coach or mentor in that press box, life is amazing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But I think the press box choice, who's in your press box, is such an important piece of a person's story. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. You know, luckily, you know, through sports, I had a lot of coaches that were surrogate father figures, whether they knew it or not. And, you know, I kind of gained perspective from, you know, some of those coaches were literally in a press box. But, you know, a client of mine, the way she put it is, you know, instead of using the metaphor press box, because not everybody comes from a background of sports, it's in life, we tend to be really focused in whatever's in front of whatever we're dealing with, whatever situation, whatever people, whatever emotions. And when you talk about the press box coach, think about another way to look at it is sometimes you need to zoom out so you can see the broader perspective. Now, it's difficult for me to be in the situation and zoomed out at the same time. So that's why you have a coach, somebody whose responsibility is to stay zoomed out on the bigger picture of where you're coming from, where you are, and more importantly, the best way to get from where you are to where you want to be. So the way I always explain it to clients is, you know, when we start to work together, this is a do with process. I can't fix you. If it's good, we saw the Wizard of Oz. There's no wizard. I can't fix you. If I had a magic wand that could fix you, I will probably do something else with it. So here's the thing. This is going to be a do with process. And the thing is, you got the easy job. I got the tougher job. What I am is a mental and emotional GPS system. All I need from you is 3 things. And this is going to be easy because I got to keep the map straight, find out the fastest route, all those different things. All I need from you in this collaboration is 3 things. Number 1, where do you want to go? Because if I pull up the GPS on my phone and I don't put in a destination, it really can't help you other than to tell you where you are, which I'm pretty sure you know. So that can't be of much value to you. So first, where do we want to go? Second, follow the basic instructions I give you. Because just like the GPS, if the GPS says go that way, and I decide to go that way, it's going to take me a lot longer to get to where I want to go, or we may never get there. Now, I'm the GPS, so I'll reroute you and get you back as quickly as possible. But you know from the beginning, the easiest way to get exactly what I want to get to where I want to be is to follow the basic instructions I give you. So that's the second thing. The third thing is because this is your life or this is your family or relationship or your health, you're going to have to take the necessary actions to get us there. I'm just a GPS. You got to drive. If you do those 3 things, tell me where you want to go, follow the basic instructions and drive, success is simple. As I always put it, success is simple if you know the basic instructions. Just like Dorothy. Remember, Dorothy in the Wizard of Oz thought she wasn't smart enough or tough enough or brave enough. But you realize in the end, all she was missing was the basic instructions of the power she already had.
Right.
So that's essentially what I do. Teach people to click 3 times, access their own resources, and go back to Kansas, metaphorically.
You know, it's interesting when you were talking about the book written by Tad James, I was going to share with you that The Wizard of Oz is actually my compass. Like I always go back to The Wizard of Oz. I find it to be the most fascinating, the most profound and powerful story that I've ever heard. And whether it be, you know, Judy Garland or Stephanie Mills on Broadway or Diana Ross later on, or, you know, however, all the different renditions, I always go back to that story. And it's that story that I have called upon many times in my life where I was like, I don't know what I'm doing or I don't know where I'm going. I always go back to that. So it's interesting. And I didn't say it. So it's interesting that you brought it up for me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's funny. You know, I was told that story by a football coach a long time ago. And, you know, the way he put it, it really...
It's like the greatest story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like whenever you feel like you can't or you're not and those limiting beliefs are playing, you're just feeling like Dorothy felt. That's how Dorothy felt.
That's right.
And
That's right.
And
That's
in the end, you realize that she had the power the whole time, and so do you.
Mm-hmm.
It's really that simple.
I think the decision about who's in your press box is one of the most important decisions that a person can make. And I think it's really important, and believe that it's very important to be selective and the most generous with yourself in deciding who's going to be in your press box. And sometimes it's more than one person, and sometimes it's a coach that you hire, and sometimes it's just people who wind up in there. And I think it's very important to make sure that if there is someone in there, you don't always have to, sometimes you just don't have a person in there, but if you do have someone in there, make sure it's the person that you want to be helping you to see what's going on. And if you do have the ability and the resources and the inclination to hire someone who is clear and who can really serve as a GPS to get you to where you are. And so that's, one of the reasons why I wanted to chat with you specifically about this, Chukky, because I know that you have a heart for it. And I know you've lived through some things, and you've applied these teachings to your own life to get to where you are today. And I would just love more and more people to know about that. Is there any other piece of advice or practical learning that you'd like, or basic instructions that you'd like to share before we close?
Yeah, I'll give you this as quickly as I can, because this is something that, our coach told us the year we won the Super Bowl, actually, at a time when we were starting to doubt ourselves. And he came in and he said to us, guys, when you think about where you're at in this season right now, realize that you don't know what you don't know. And believe it or not, it's what you don't know that's running the show called your career and your life. So think about this for a moment. Since you don't know what you don't know, how do you know what you believe you do know is right?
Wow.
Don't answer me now. Just consider what I'm saying. You don't know what you don't know. And think about this. If you did know what right now you don't know, how would what you think is wrong in your life look different? Just always question what you believe you know, and be open to being wrong. Because a lot of times the choice is, would I rather be right or happy?
I love that.
Basic instructions.
Thank you.
Yep,
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you having me here.
I have enjoyed having this conversation with you so much. It's everything that I thought we would be talking about, and so much more. I really do appreciate you as a human being, as a man, as someone who is walking your path and doing so with integrity and with heart. It means a lot. And I really appreciate it. So thank you so much for being here.
I appreciate you having me. I appreciate, all of your sentiments. And if there's anything I can do to help you or anybody who's relying on you in their press box, or just as a North Star and a guide to help them find their path, I'm all in. So
I received that. That. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to thank Chukky Okobi for taking the time to sit down with me, for pouring his heart and soul into his practice, and for allowing us an inside look into his personal struggles. This conversation with Chukky is a true testament to the power we all have to create a life that we love living. Thank you so much again for tuning in to this week's episode of the Shaping Freedom podcast with Lisan Basquiat. Join me next time. And in the meantime, please like, share, and comment on this episode. I love hearing from you, and I appreciate you listening.